Greetings from the National Family Farm Coalition in Via Campesina. And also I would like to thank the sovereign indigenous nations on whose property, territorial property, we are having this meeting for allowing us to be here. And I guess from the introduction that you probably aren't going to know anything about what Via Campesina is unless I explain it a little bit. Via Campesina is an international social movement, and since the last printing, which said we were from 56 countries, we are now from 60 countries and growing in China and in the former Eastern Bloc countries. But it is a social movement of peasants and small family farmers, indigenous people, women, landless people, farm workers, who are supporting the concept of food sovereignty, which in a nutshell is that every people's, every country, every community should have the right to decide their own food and agricultural policy, should have the right to raise their own food, to feed their own communities, and not be forced by trade agreements and other international institutions. So 10 years ago, I really didn't know what to expect when I came to Seattle and to represent the National Family Farm Coalition as a member of Via Campesina. And it was actually my first event where I actually met other Via Campesina members from around the world. And most of the members had never been to the United States, let alone very far from their homes at all. But they knew that they had to come here to stand in solidarity against the WTO. Via Campesina members and the rest of the world learned that we ordinary Americans are far better than the stereotypes about us as greedy, arrogant usurpers of the world's resources. We do care, we share, we listen, we learn, we question authority, we deplore injustice. We want to do the right thing, and not just for Americans, but for people everywhere. The whole world was watching Seattle 10 years ago, and they saw proof that you can fight City Hall even on a powerful global level, okay? And saying that you can't fight City Hall is like saying you can't bake a cake. Oh, yes, you can bake a cake with good ingredients, with a good recipe, and with a little help from your friends. So 10 years ago, all of us committed friends, we baked a cake of shared values and commitment. We whipped up a recipe that was very satisfying for working together to confront the WTO and let them know that we are not going to follow their recipe for corporate world dominance under the guise of trade. So we stirred with a fury, and the Seattle round cake fell flat. Seattle solidified Via Campa's determination to meet in opposition and present alternatives to the neoliberal model wherever and whenever international institutions met to discuss food and agriculture. With many of you, we were in Cancun, where our Korean brother, Mr. Lee, sacrificed himself to show and bring attention to the plight of farmers under the WTO. We were in Qatar for the Doha round, although in much smaller numbers because it was such an inaccessible place. We were in Hong Kong, where 1,200 of our farmers were jailed for their participation. And right now we have Via Campesina leaders in Geneva reminding the ministers of their responsibility in the current food, financial, climate, economic crises. So we're going to be having a large delegation in Copenhagen and arguing that ecological peasant agriculture can cool the planet, can feed the world, can protect biodiversity and air, land, and water. In the last 10 years, Via Campesina has held 3 international conferences. At Bangalore, India in 2000, we held the first Women's Assembly, and we adopted gender parity for our International Coordinating Committee. At the time, we had 8 regions in the world, and they were represented by 7 men and 1 woman, who just happened to be my alternate now, who is from National Farmers Union of Canada. And at that meeting, with lots of fuss and muss, the women said, we are going to have equal representation. We now have 9 regions, and we are represented on the International Coordinating Committee by 9 men and 9 women. In 2004, we were in Atasi, Brazil, to strategize against the WTO and free trade agreements in other parts of the world, and we had our first ever youth assembly. And in 2007, with principal allies, we organized the International Forum on Food Sovereignty in Nyaleni, Mali, which is a village that we built for the event, which is now being developed as a training and conference center. And we have been able to get the concept of food sovereignty into the national constitutions and/or the laws in Ecuador, Nepal, Mali, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN now recognizes food sovereignty, and the concept is even gaining ground in this country. Our 5th international conference was in Maputo, Mozambique in October of 2008, last October, where with the participation of many of organizations and allied movements, we held our first formal assembly with our allies. And at this conference, we also launched 2 very important global campaigns. The campaign for a declaration of peasants' rights through the United Nations, and the World Campaign to End Violence Against Women. And November 24th is the International Day Against Violence Against Women. As we recognize that unless we eradicate violence against women in our own movement, we're not going to be advancing in our struggles. We're not going to be building the new society that we desire, because women's rights are human rights. At this 5th conference, we vowed to redouble our struggles against free trade agreements and economic partnership agreements and the WTO by focusing more directly on the roles played by transnational corporations and their aggressive economic expansion of imperialism and militarism. Seattle was a benchmark for Via Campesina. It showed us what was possible and the importance of working together with people who shared our values. It pushed us to set the bar higher in our own determination to grow our movement in this country and all over the world, and to bring hope to millions more people who think they are forgotten in their struggles for justice and survival. And personally for myself, I was really proud to march in solidarity with people from all walks of life and all ages. And I was able to report live from the streets back to my home community of 5,000 on what was really going on and why and what they could do to help. Because all they heard in the news was about breaking windows and violence. And when I got home, people asked me, how many windows did you break and did you go to jail? So now they know, at least in my little community, they know what really happened. There are events that we need to be, or things that we need to be supporting, and we heard the climate is right for change, but blessings are curses and curses are blessings, and some of the curses that we are currently undergoing give us an opportunity to make changes. And something very important is the food safety regulations, Senate Bill 510. As written presently, they would be a real barrier to local food systems being built. So you need to get on your Congress people and tell them that one-size-fits-all legislation is not appropriate. As long as we as Americans continue to support the power junkies in Congress and the corporate pushers who feed their habit, we're going to continue to have others make poor choices for us as a society and for societies all over the world. It's our responsibility to truly participate in a government which is open, transparent, honest, and moral. We are right to celebrate this 10th anniversary of a memorable and historical people's victory over power. And we will use this occasion to recommit to fight together for a world where everyone can live with peace and dignity and reclaim the right to feed our communities and change the climate in a positive way. As an international movement, the greatest strength of Via Campesina is our ability to unite a diversity of cultures and opinions to build consensus within a single movement. We are committed to the defense of food and agriculture, to food sovereignty, and to all that it encompasses. We are the family farmers, the peasants, the rural people of the world. We refuse to disappear, and we ask you to help us globalize the struggle and globalize the hope. Thank you.